My sweet, my sweet Audrina, Part 2, A Long Day's Journey. Arden came running to me in the airport. Soon I was so tightly embraced and so fervently kissed that I pulled away, overwhelmed with his emotions. Frantically I looked for Sylvia, who disappeared the moment Arden seized me in his arms. After an hour's search, we found my small sister staring at the colorful magazines. She was completely disheveled by this time, and I'd wanted Arden to see how pretty she was when she was fresh and clean. To make matters worse, someone who'd meant to be kind had given her a chocolate ice cream cone. Half the ice cream was on her face, part in her hair, and in her nostrils, and very little of what was left was finding its melting way into her mouth. I took it from her grasp and held it for her to lick. Worse than anything was the stench that came from her diapers. I'd managed to half-toilet train Sylvia, but she still had enough accidents that I kept her in diapers. There was little Arden and I could talk about on the way home, when every move Sylvia made was an embarrassment to both of us. "I'll see you later this evening," he said as I let him out on the corner. He tried not to wrinkle his nose when Sylvia clawed at him for affection. No sooner were Sylvia and I inside the house than I heard the loud voice of my father. A terrible argument was coming on in the kitchen. I paused in the doorway with my arm protectively around Sylvia's thin shoulders. Aunt Elizabeth was dashing about, frantically preparing another of those troublesome gourmet meals that Papa loved so much. She wore a new dress, a very pretty feminine dress that might well have been taken from my mother's closet, where all her clothes still hung, growing old and musty-smelling. Aunt Elizabeth wielded a huge cleaver so ferociously I wondered why Papa didn't fear for his life when she glared at him with that thing in her hand. He didn't seem afraid, as he bellowed again, "Ellie, what the hell is wrong with you?" "You need to ask. You didn't come home until 5:30 this morning. You're sleeping with someone. Who?" "It's really none of your business," he answered coldly. I shrugged her from his flat tone. Couldn't he tell she loved him, and he was doing his best? She was doing the best she could to please him. "None of my business, eh?" she stormed. "Well, we'll see about that, Dame Adar." Her dark eyes furious, my aunt seized up the large bowl full of her chopped vegetables and quickly dumped them down the garbage disposal. Then she was emptying all the steaming pots and pans into the sink. "Stop that! That food costs me good money. Elizabeth, behave yourself." "To hell with you," she screamed back at him. She tore off her apron and hurled it in his face and shouted, "I need a life of my own, Damien. A life far from here. I'm sick of being your housekeeper, your cook, your gardener, your laundry expert, and most of all, I'm sick of being your now-and-then bed partner. I'm also sick of taking care of your idiot daughter. And as for Audrina—" "Yes," drawled Papa, his eyes narrowing. "What is it you want to say about my Audrina?" I quivered as I drew Sylvia into my embrace, trying to cover her ears and her eyes and shield her as much as possible from this. I had to hear what they were going to say. They didn't seem to see either of us, and I watched the color of Aunt's usually pale face drain away. "I wouldn't tell her, Damien. Really, I wouldn't. I would never tell Audrina anything to make her unhappy. Just let me go. Give me what is mine, let me go." "And what is it that is yours, Ellie?" "You know what is mine. After you lost Lucida's inheritance, you went after what little I had left. You promised to pay it back double in 3 months. What a fool I was to have believed in you. But hasn't that always been my weakness, believing in you? Now, Damien, give me back my $2,000, doubled. Where would you go if you left here, Ellie? What would you do?" He picked up a little paring knife she'd used to peel potatoes and began to clean under his nails. "I'm going to my daughter. To your daughter, too, though you don't want to admit she is. She's in that huge city all alone, cast off by that man she ran away with." He stayed her with his unpraised hand. "I don't care to hear more. You're a fool if you go to her. She doesn't love you, Ellie. She just wants to take what you'll bring. I heard in the village Lamar Rinsdale killed himself. No doubt your daughter had a lot to do with his suicide." "Damien, please," she wailed, all fire gone. "Just give me what is mine. That's all I want. I'll go and never bother you again. I swear you'll not hear from me or Vera. Just give me enough so I won't starve." "I'm not giving you 1 red cent," said Papa coldly. "As long as you stay in my home, you'll have food to eat, clothes to wear, and a place to sleep, and money to spend on your trifles you need. But hell will freeze over before I give you money to go and live with that hellcat you gave birth to. And remember this, Ellie. Once you leave, you can't come back. Not again. Life is hard on the outside, Ellie, very hard. You're not a young woman anymore, and even if it isn't heaven here, it isn't hell either. Think twice before you leave me." "Isn't it hell?" "It's hell with a capital H. Damien, pure, unadulterated hell. What am I here but an unpaid housekeeper? After Lucida died, and you begin to look at my way with kind eyes, I thought you'd love me again. You came to my bedroom when you needed your release, and I gave you that. I should have denied you, but I wanted you, as I've always wanted you. When you lived in this house with my sister, I stayed awake at night, picturing the two of you in your bedroom, and how I envied her and hated her. I began to hate you, too. even more than I did her. Now I wish to God I'd never come back with Vera. There was a young doctor in the hospital where I gave birth to Vera who wanted me to marry him, but I had your image engraved on my brain. It was you I wanted. God alone knows why, when I knew even then what you were and still are. Give me my money, Damien. In a few seconds, when my father stood at the table, she was back, carrying her father's corporation checkbook. Write it. Make it $25,000. After all, this was my home too, and I should get something for abandoning my lifetime privilege to live under this roof. Wasn't it considerate of my sister to include me in her will? It was almost as if she meant for her husband to be part of her legacy, but I don't need you nearly as much as I need the money. He gave the blue checkbook a funny look, then took it and with precision wrote a long blue check. She glanced at the figure, then glanced again. Damien didn't ask for $50,000. Don't leave me, Ellie. Say you're sorry for all those ugly words. Tear up the check or keep it, but don't go. Rising again to his feet, he tried to take her in his arms. She kept staring at the check. As I watched, I saw a blush of excitement heat her face. Then Papa seized her from behind and turned her around to crush his full lips on hers. Greatly to my surprise, after all, she screamed at him. Her arms slipped eagerly around his neck, and she responded to his kisses with just as much ardor as he showed. Helplessly, as if unable to resist, she allowed him to pick her up. He headed for the back stairs with my aunt in his arms. Feeling numb and dazed and queasiness in my stomach, I dragged my trembling sister into the kitchen. I picked up the check, stared at the $50,000 and no cents, and made out to Elizabeth Whitburn. I pinned the check to the corkboard where my aunt was sure to see it in the morning, and with it she could leave if she wanted to. All that I'd heard and seen in the kitchen churned in my head, and that night, like a carousel of skeletal ponies going round and round and round and up and down, Lamar Renstill had killed himself. Why? How did the villagers know? Had his death been in the local newspapers? And if it had, why hadn't I seen it? It had to be that Vera had called and told my aunt, and she was so grief-stricken now she needed someone. And the only one she had was her mother. Had Vera truly loved my handsome music teacher? If so, why had he taken his own life? I sighed and heard the wind answer, and that was all the answer I was likely to get. Deep in the recesses of my mind, I avoided the biggest question of all. What was it my aunt promised she wouldn't tell me? What was the secret that would make me so unhappy if I learned it? Bad dreams woke me up early the next morning. At the top of the front stairs, with the early sun pouring through the stained glass, I stopped short and froze. Down on the foyer floor, with the sun coming through the rich, colorful glass, to throw dramatic designs on the floor, my aunt was sprawled face down and very still. I took the steps slowly, like someone sleepwalking and fearful every second of facing too many horrors. She's not dead, I kept telling myself. Not dead, only hurt. I had to call an ambulance before it was too late. She very seldom used the front stairs because the back ones took her down to the kitchen, which was where she stayed most all day. I thought I heard a faint sound from the kitchen, like a door being carefully closed. Tentatively I approached her. Aunt Ellie, I whispered. Don't be dead, I pleaded over and over. She was difficult to move, like lead. Her head lolled unnaturally loose as I shoved and pushed and finally had her on her back. Dead. She was dead. Dressed for traveling in a suit I'd never seen before. She was dead and already traveling to compare his heaven and hell with hers. There was a scream stuck in my throat. Rasping sobs kept it from sounding. I didn't want her dead. I wanted her to have that check and have the chance to enjoy herself, and at the same time I wanted her to stay on here with us. Crying freely now, I began to straighten the bow at the neck of her new white blouse. I tugged down her skirt so her slip wouldn't show and arranged her broken legs beneath her so she wouldn't look broken anymore. With that huge bun at the back of her head kept falling at a crazy angle. Crying harder, I undid her figure-8 knot and spread her hair so it looked pretty. Then her head stayed in position. Everything done now, I heard the screams. Over and over, someone was screaming. It was me. Out of the kitchen, heavy feet came running, a voice calling my name. I whirled to see Celia tripping awkwardly down the stairs. Babbling to herself, she tried to hold on to the banister. She was coming to me as fast as possible, a big smile on her pretty face, and her eyes were focused. I thought she was going to speak when suddenly from behind me a voice. Who was screaming? Asked Papa. Ellie? Is that Ellie? Oh, Ellie, did you have to do this? I gave you a check, Ellie, more than you asked for. You could have gone. You didn't have to fall down the stairs just to hurt me. Seeming to remember my presence, he paused and asked, how did this happen? I was coming downstairs when I saw her. She was face down on the floor like she'd fallen. She very seldom used front stairs. You turned her over? Yes, I turned her over. You heard us last night, didn't you? Before I could answer, he was picking up the purse I hadn't noticed rummaging through. No check, he said. We did quarrel last night, Audrina, but later on we made up. I asked her to marry me. She seemed very happy when she went back to her room. She wouldn't leave me. I know she wouldn't do that. Not after I asked her. And she wanted that. I know she wanted that. I grabbed hold of Sylvia and forced her to run with me to the back stairs, hoping we'd reach my aunt's room first, and I'd be there to see what he did with the check when we found it. Even if his way was the longest way, he was in her room before I could drag Sylvia there. Her suitcase lay open on her bed. Frantically, he was tearing through it. I can't find it. Audrina, I have to find that check. Did you see it? I told him then that I'd pinned it to the corkboard. He groaned. Audrina, run and see if it's still there. With Sylvia beside me, I stumbled along and tried to hurry. I reached the kitchen and found the corkboard empty. I reported that to Papa. He sighed heavily, glanced again at the still form of my aunt in her crisp dark suit, then dialed the police. Now, you just tell them exactly how you found her, but don't tell them she was leaving. I'll put away all her clothes. I can't believe she was leaving anyway. She had such idiotic things in her suitcase. Clothes that wouldn't even fit her now. I do not think it'd be a good idea if you took off your aunt's traveling suit and put on whatever house dresses. I didn't want to, though I understood his reasoning. And with his help, we managed to take off her jacket, blouse, and skirt. Soon she was wearing a plaid cotton dress. I was trembling long before we were finished. Hurriedly, I did up her hair while Papa held her in position. My fingers shook so her knot had never looked so messy. No sooner was I dressed myself than the police were jabbing at the doorbell. Huddled with Sylvia at my side on a purple valet chaise, I watched and listened as my father gave the two policemen an explanation of my aunt's fall downstairs. He appeared calm, only a little distraught, with worry and sadness, making him generally grief-stricken. Mrs. Adair, you were the one who found her? She was on her back. No, sir, she was face down. I didn't want to think she was dead, so I turned her over to check. Was your aunt subject to dizzy spells? On and on the questions came until Papa fell into a chair and bowed his head into his hands. Somehow I forgot to mention I'd heard the back door softly close, but perhaps I'd only imagined hearing that. Where were you when your sister-in-law fell? The older policeman, looking directly at Papa. I was asleep. Even as my aunt's body was lifted and put on a stretcher, covered over, and taken to the police morgue, the questions went on and on. I was numb and feeling dazed. I was so forgetful of Sylvia, who hadn't eaten breakfast. That was the first thing I did after the police left. Papa sat down to eat what I prepared too, not saying a word to me, only chewing and swallowing automatically. Yet later on, when I was alone in my room and Sylvia was napping in hers, I kept thinking of my aunt and the argument she'd had with Papa. She'd wanted to go to Vera, and now she was dead. The more I thought about that, the more alarmed I became about my own situation. How many times had my aunt told me to escape when I had the opportunity? Hundreds of times. Now, while Papa was off somewhere making funeral arrangements, was my chance. Where did you go when fate kept breaking your heart over and over again? A little voice inside me kept whispering that Papa thought baby girls were born every day just to serve his needs when they grew older. And when he was old and ugly, he was thinking money would buy them. And when that even money couldn't, he'd still have me left to take care of him and keep him from the institution he seemed to hate. Even as I thought that, behind that was another whispering menace, the awful thing my aunt had said to him about how he was capable of doing anything and everything to get his way. I dashed about madly, throwing my clothes into suitcases. I ran for Sylvia's room and gathered up what she'd need, too. We were leaving before something awful happened to us, too. Now, while Papa was away and couldn't stop us. As I pulled Sylvia along with me, we had to pass the front salon, and in the door I paused and said goodbye to my mother's grand piano. Full moon and empty arms. Steel arms, that's the kind my father had, killing arms of love. As I stood there, I think I forgot every hateful, mean thing my aunt had ever said or done to me and Sylvia. I shoved into the darkest corners of my brain all she'd said to tell me I was too sensitive and unable to cope with reality, and remembered only the good things she'd thought and thoughtful deeds. I forgave her everything. Pulling Sylvia with me, I picked up the two heavy suitcases and began our journey through the woods to reach the cottage on the far side. Billy looked sober when I told her my plans. Arden was delighted. Of course, what a wonderful idea. But why can't your aunt look out for Sylvia? It's not going to be much of a honeymoon if we have to drag her along with us. With my head low and a voice, too, I told them what had happened and that it was escape now or never. I had told everything in such a way that Papa had seemed blameless. But had I spared him? Billy cuddled me in her strong arms. We have to think some things are for the best when there's nothing we can do about it anyway. You told me your aunt had acted all winter like she wasn't happy, or she was ill. Maybe she did have a dizzy spell. Now there's no reason why you can't leave Sylvia here with me if you truly feel you have to escape like this. I just want you to be sure you love my son, Audrina. Don't marry Arden today and regret it tomorrow. I will love Arden forever, I cried fervently. All my life will be devoted to making you happy. Nervously, I glanced from Celia, who started to scream when Billy tried to touch her, to Billy, then Arden. I couldn't leave my sister with Billy, whom she seemed to fear and dislike. I'd promised Papa a long time ago that I'd take care of Sylvia. She was my responsibility, and I couldn't leave her. My heart seemed to stop as I waited for Arden's reaction after I told him Sylvia had to go with us. He blanched and quietly agreed. Perhaps Billy was right to look worried as she waved goodbye.